Hello Internet. Today I'm going to be talking about why I have no hope for the future. I know that sounds pretty depressing, like for a video subject, why I have no hope for the future, but if you listen to this whole video, watch this entire playthrough, it should make sense to you why I feel that way. It's worth mentioning I'm using a crappy $20 mic to record this, so if the audio sounds a bit shit, that's why. Some of the more recent videos I've been doing as of late for GameFAQ Special, I've been using a much nicer mic that is my dad's mic. That's like really much better quality, but not really the type of mic you'd want to use while playing a game. So I'll just be using this crappy mic. Anyways, so where do I begin? So I look at it like this. The economy we live under right now is rigged heavily against the millennial generation, but it's significantly worse for Gen Z. And I know it's significantly worse for Gen Z because whenever I have conversations on the internet with Zoomers who went to college, their experience in college was like a million times worse than most millennials I know, because they had to experience college during the pandemic. And this pandemic, as far as I'm concerned, has really broken people to where people are not the way they used to be before the pandemic. I'm not saying things were great before, that people were just magical and wonderful before, but things seem a bit off. I'll give you a few examples. So, the life of a retail worker, for example, is not easy, at least for a lot of retail workers. And what made this more obvious to me is just my own experience working retail, both at Walmart in 2014 and working at Grocery Outlet in 2021. Neither of those are easy jobs. They're not like rocket science jobs by any means, but they're not easy jobs. Anyways, so there's some people who, they work at retail and they're very good at what they do. You can tell that these are people who are experts at what they do. They are highly competent at their job and their brain works right. A good example of this is one day my shoes broke because I suck at buying shoes. And I went to this shoe store. This guy was an expert selling shoes. He made a convincing argument to me why I screwed up previously with how I bought my previous shoes. He recommended me a pair. They fit wonderfully. I spent a lot of money on them, but they're the best shoes I've ever had, and a lot of my feet problems went away. And my back feels better because I'm wearing better shoes. So that's a rare example of a retail worker who's extremely competent at their job. Very, very few people really match that description. And lately, I'll give you an example of just how bad some of the employees are getting at some of these random stores. So there's this vitamin store I used to shop at for years. One of my friends used to work there, and he was extremely good at his job when he worked there. A lot of other people who work there were extremely good at their job. I have a question, and they'd be able to answer it competently. And the other day, I made a phone call just trying to find out, hey, for the CBD oil they have, how much milligrams is the overall, what's in the overall thing that they sell? And I literally was on the phone for over 5 minutes, and the guy was so incompetent at his job, he just kept repeating himself. It's like he didn't understand my question. How much was in the entire thing? All he could read was yeah, this is how much is in each droplet. No, how much is in the entire thing? I got so frustrated, I ended up hanging the phone up because I couldn't deal with that. After dealing with this guy for 5 minutes on the phone, I just couldn't deal with that. So, good example of someone who just sucks at his job, who replaced competent people who were really good at their job. Recently, Recently I noticed at this water store I've been shopping at for several years, some of the newer employees are much worse than the older employees. This one woman has to be the worst cashier I have literally ever met in my life. I mean, I will give her like $1 and she will give me the wrong change. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, but literally 4 times now. There's one day she accidentally gave me more than $1 back. And because she screwed up that bad, about 20 seconds after I walked out of the store, she was literally screaming at me in public because she screwed up and needed me to give back some of the change. That's a very embarrassing situation where you're just trying to walk away from a store you just, shop at, and suddenly you're being screamed at by a retail employee because they're so abysmal at their job that for the 4th time, they could not give me the right amount of change after I gave them $1 for water. And these type of incidents are happening more and more often lately, where I'm noticing competent employees, people who are really good at their job, are suddenly no longer working at these places that they were very good at doing their job at. This seems to be everywhere. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that this economy has gone in a direction where a lot of these jobs that people used to be able to work at, where they could, survive off the wages, they no longer can. And what's interesting is that overall in California, I've really noticed the state completely went to shit during the pandemic. Just absolute dog shit. And the voters do not hold them accountable because we live under a 2-party system where either people tend to vote Democrat or they tend to vote Republican. Sure, you can run as a third-party candidate, and California has a jungle primary system to where, if anything, this should be one of the easiest states to win as an independent. But it's not. It's a nightmare to win any election in this country unless you're a Democrat or Republican. And even if you run as an independent, a lot of times you have to play ball with one of the 2 major parties or else your career is ruined, to where you might as well just run as a Democrat or Republican. In many ways, our elections are rigged by the 2-party system. And I think one of the worst examples of how rigged our elections are is, especially during the primaries, is in 2016 when Bernie Sanders ran for president. We found out through WikiLeaks that a lot of... I really hope I don't screw... I fucked that up. I have to play through the whole level normally. Okay, normally if you could get the barrel to the left side, you can just skip through most of the stage, but I screwed that up and I'm not redoing it. Anyways, back to my subject. So yeah, Bernie Sanders pretty much got cheated. There's all this evidence in the world, and he didn't really... I am playing this like shit now. And he didn't really do much about it because he's a coward. Most politicians are cowards. He is no exception. He promised a political revolution and he lied. And he is a way richer man for it. He would have less money right now if he wasn't a coward. Most politicians are cowards. He's no exception. People love to believe he's an exception, but he is... Oh my god, I'm fucking this up. I just haven't done the normal route in a long time. Wow, I literally... Oh my god, I literally haven't done this route in a long ass time. Because I normally go through this route. Anyways, so yeah, he would not challenge the Democratic Party for basically rigging the primary against him, even though there's all the evidence in the world of that. And even Elizabeth Warren, in an interview, admitted that, yeah, the primary was rigged. I am not playing well. It's hard for me to play well and talk at the same time. That's why almost all the gameplay videos I uploaded last year, I didn't talk at all. And because I'm a perfectionist, you know, I just want to play as well as I can. I'm trying to let go of that perfectionism for this video because I feel like the message of this video is more important than my gameplay. Anyways. So yeah, there's all this evidence in the world that, yeah, that election was rigged. Even, you know, some politicians who are part of the Democratic Party at one point admit, yeah, that it was in a rigged election. And, you know, bad shit, basically. That wasn't that happened. Oh well, that's funny. I love this game, by the way. Anyways, so yeah, tons of evidence. If people want me to go more detail about that, I'd be willing to make a video. Leave a comment if you want me to make a video going into detail about how the 2016 primary election is rigged. I don't think there's much of an audience for that. It's a subject that's been done to death, but people want me to give my own take on that. I'm willing to do that. Anyways, so yeah, that was just literally one of the most fucked up elections I had ever seen in my life. I had a negative opinion of the Democratic Party for a long time, but I had no idea they were corrupt to such an extreme until election. And as a byproduct of that, losing confidence in the Democratic Party. I just don't want to get killed. As a byproduct, I'm going to just play this stage carefully so I can just focus on what I'm saying. As a byproduct of me losing confidence in the Democratic Party, I was starting to become more and more interested in the Libertarian Party, especially because when Gary Johnson and Bill Weld ran for president, they were actually making an effort to appeal to left-wing voters, which the Libertarian Party has neglected as a demographic for a long time. And I used to be part of the left. I'm not currently part of the left, but I used to be. So that was very appealing to me that they were trying to make the Libertarian Party a bigger tent party that was more inclusive to people who weren't just right libertarian minded, but also left libertarian minded. It was making the party more electable, and it gave me hope that, like, hey, this political party might actually have a future. Fast forward to now, the party has been hijacked by right-wing nationalists, and almost any video I've uploaded to YouTube promoting Libertarian Party, I have now unlisted because it is not reflective of what I feel about the party currently. And the videos are still there. You can go to, like, my miscellaneous, some of my playlists on YouTube to watch those videos. One of them, I was encouraging the left libertarians to join the Libertarian Party because I felt like the left libertarians and right libertarians should work together. I still feel they should work together, but I don't think it's going to work out within the Libertarian Party. Boy, I'm playing careful. I should just cartwheeled. My autopilot isn't the best with video games. I have to, like, think constantly much of the time when I play games. Anyways, so yeah, and then there was a video where I talked about, you know, my views on taxes, and I was saying we should vote Libertarian, this and that. I enlisted that video as well because I just, I really was not, I don't really want that video to, like, be highlighted on my channel right now because of the fact I promote the Libertarian Party. And my main Twitter account, The Willie Corley, most of the people who follow that Twitter account are basically people who follow that account when there was a hashtag that was trending called No Libertarian Under 1K. And that hashtag's dead now, and quite honestly, it's put me in a weird position with that account where, plus, I feel like the audience I tried to gain on there is no longer like the audience I'm, like, primarily targeting, partially because of the fact I have no hope when it comes to politics. Like, at this point, I think it's a complete waste of my time to care about the outcome of any election. And yet there's a part of me that really likes there's a part of me that still likes the idea of voting. It's just the system itself is rigged, and there's really no solution to fix it at all. I mean, the Electoral College is not going to get repealed. I'd like it to get repealed. It's not going to get repealed. The country is so polarized that really to fix the system, you would have to have a non-polarized electorate, but the people in power have done everything they can to polarize the electorate, mainly to keep their own positions in power. Like both the Democrats and Republicans. I mean, I think both political parties are two extremely hateful parties that have brought out the worst in America, myself included. There are times when I was younger, where I feel like the influence of those political parties made me a more hateful person. That's one of the reasons why I don't vote for Democrats anymore, because I think they're an extremely hateful cult. Anyways, I also feel the same about the Republican Party, so I have no love for that party either. I view literally both parties as two extremely hateful cults. And, a lot of people, when they start turning against the left, they're like, well, I guess I'm gonna just vote Republican now. And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do what the baby boomers did. I actually don't understand. I wonder, like, a lot of millennials who, like, do a lot of the things the baby boomers did, are they, like, self-aware they're doing what the baby boomers did that didn't quite work out? Like, the system we have right now is fucking horrible, and yet I'm just watching millennials make the same mistakes as the boomers. Like, the system we have right now is garbage, and part of that is because the baby boomers, like, made decisions like continuing with a two-party system. Like, that's just one example. I literally don't understand why there isn't more of a desire in the electorate to destroy the two-party system by any means necessary. Like, that to me should be, like, one of the top goals in politics, especially because the system is rigged. Like, the system's unlikely to not get rigged, but at least we could, like, stop voting for the people that are helping to keep it rigged. That's just my thoughts on that front. Anyways, a lot of this is I've talked about is politics, but I want to talk about other things as well, just that are less political. Although I don't want to die this stupid boss fight. Oh my god, that's fucking embarrassing. This is not even that difficult a fight. I just playing like shit. Anyways, at least I haven't died yet. 3 worlds in. This level is, like, viewed by many people as, like, one of the hardest levels in the game. So, I may end up playing it a bit more carefully. But anyways, so yeah, politically things are pretty fucked. And they've always been fucked, and I don't really see a solution to, like, unfuck it, basically. It's that bad. I mean, one thing I will say is that if people wanted a political revolution, you're not going to get it through voting. You're probably most likely to achieve it through, like, a violent revolution, but I don't even really think that's going to result in, like, a good outcome, because usually violence just leads to more violence, and it's like, if you think you're scared now with the violent crimes and this and that, if people get so fed up that they're decided to, like, do some real chaos and violence to try to achieve a political revolution, the world we live under will just probably be a lot worse. So, I mean, just realistically speaking, I don't see a political revolution happening unless people choose violence, but I don't really see that actually resulting in good outcome. So this video is not inciting violence, I'm just saying realistically speaking, you're not going to achieve a political revolution through voting. Violence could achieve a political revolution, but it could be like the ugliest revolution that vast majority of people, myself included, don't want to experience. Oh dear, I almost fucked this up. No, I died. I screwed that up so bad. Oh well, that's fine. Dang, I almost got through that whole level without dying. Oh well. Anyways, so yeah, now there are certain things that people can do. Like they could create art to critique, stuff in society, things like that. That's certainly an option. You know what, I'm just going to focus on this 100%. Okay, my inputs are completely off. It's worth mentioning I used to use a DualShock 4 that had, like, literally no input lag. And and that's not currently an option because my Chronos Max device died. I made a video a long time ago about the Chronos Max if you're interested. That were problems I had with it, but I never made a video talking about the solutions. That's one thing that's very weird about my YouTube channel in retrospect, is that, see, a lot of the oldest videos I made for this channel, I never made follow-ups because they were mainly just videos I made to, like, complement, like, forum posts. And then somehow, like, these videos ended up actually getting a lot of attention. Like, my most popular video about my modded Wiimote, I never really thought in a million years that would get over 140,000 views. And I'm going to tell you guys a little bit secret, one of the big reasons why I never made follow-up. See, I made that video. I chose New Super Mario Bros. Wii because it was probably the best game I could have picked to demonstrate my modded Wiimote. I don't actually like that game very much. So, most of the people who subscribe to this channel, they subscribe to the channel because they like that game. But I don't actually like that game very much. I haven't touched it in over a decade. There's a part of me that feels like I should just make a ton of videos about that game, a game I don't even actually like. And part of why I don't like that game is because I think it's extremely gimmicky compared to some of the previous Mario games. Like Super Mario World, in my opinion, is like a million times better. Like like the power-ups. I mean, sure, you don't have that many power-ups, but like the Cape Feather is like a million times better than like the thing that spins you in the air. Oh, cool, I get to shake the Wiimote and it goes slightly higher in the air. And it's like, this is like almost like career suicide for like a YouTuber, where hey, you get a viral video, and well, a semi-viral video, you get your audience, and but it's like literally for a video I never thought in a million years that would like get a bunch of attention. And I don't even like the game that much. I mean, it's okay. I think the game's okay for the most part. I have some good memories with New Super Mario Bros. Wii, but overall, it's like, I just think it's vastly inferior to like a lot of other Mario games. But it's also probably like the best-selling Mario game ever, with the exception of maybe New Super Mario Bros. For like DS. And both of those sold over like 30 million copies. So yeah, that's kind of been like my big secret and why I haven't really put a ton of effort to an actual follow-up, because I don't actually like the game very much. And this is one of the problems as a YouTuber, is that a lot of times you often have to become what your audience wants if you actually want to be successful on this platform. And for most of my life, I've been very vocal about what I believe, what I think. And it's like, I feel like what people generally do to become successful on YouTube, it's not really the way I live my life. Or really, almost any aspect of my life, really. I mean, I do not view myself as a successful person. I did well I initially did well in college, but like health issues screwed me over. And I felt like my ego when I was younger was pretty much held up by my academic performance, which in retrospect is kind of depressing to me. Nowadays I have like little to no ego. And I don't necessarily view that as a bad thing either, but yeah, so again, how does this relate to me like having no hope for the future? This is a very rambly video. A long time ago I tried a series called W.A.C. Rambles, back when I went by the handle W.A.C, and it was absolutely terrible. About the only video that was actually really salvageable that I even have public on my channel anymore was a video talking about issues I had with a controller that later got like over 2,000 views, which, you know, those aren't huge numbers, but like, I don't know, if I get over 2,000 views for a video, I'm like happy. Like, I just, it means like over 2,000 people watched a video I made. Like, that's cool. I don't know, that's just my outlook. I really I kind of operate more on the mindset of try to compare myself to my past self rather than just compare myself to other people. Because if I lived my life just comparing myself to other people, um, I'll be miserable to an extreme. Like, I literally would have no reason to not be miserable if all I did was compare myself to other people. Because, like, other people have things I don't have. Which makes sense because we are all individuals. None of us are supposed to be... You know what? I'm going to just take the bird. Sometimes when I try speedrun this, I don't take the bird because the bird causes lag, but I just don't feel like straining my eyes in this stage. That's actually one thing I find really interesting about this game, is that there's a lot of older games they used to toy more with sensory deprivation. I think that's how you pronounce it. Where they don't really do that anymore for like Nintendo games because they're more concerned about people who have like, you know, vision issues, which is understandable. I mean, I don't really think sensory deprivation in general is like a great way to balance a game. Like, oh, hey, you can't, hey, if you're disabled with your vision, you're going to have a nightmare time in the stage. Yeah, not the best way to design a game. This game is very much a byproduct of 1994, in both good and bad. But I kind of love the game the way it is. I've been playing this game like for, God, like over 25 years. And it's a fun game. I love it. Anyways, so again, the whole no hope for the future thing. Very, very bleak title for a video. Why do I feel that way? I'm just noticing a lot of ugly trends that are unlikely to get better, partially because the system's pretty much rigged against the millennial generation and Gen Z. And to make matters worse, I think automation has the potential to completely destroy this economy. Like, I know there's a lot of fear-mongering about automation, but the more I look into it, the more I see what's capable of happening. It's like, there's a lot of stuff that people currently have, you know, human beings do the job, that suddenly you can just be replaced by a robot. And, again, not the most original take, but that is concerning when you look at the fact that a lot of times people's identities are often heavily defined by the work they do. At least some platforms like on social media like Newgrounds has taken like a strong approach against artificial intelligence where you literally cannot upload art that used AI. Most platforms are not going to go with that. It's just too difficult to regulate. So yeah, that's concerning. So yeah, when it comes to work in general, it seems like a lot of people are going to be screwed. And what's happening is that people who are competent at their job are no longer working at the job they were competent in because there's no way they have any way to like afford surviving those jobs. And that's very concerning. I don't like the fact that right now, so most of my friends, they're either in their 30s or in their late 20s. That makes up most of my friends. The vast majority of friends I have that live in California right now, that are in that age range, currently live with family. 5 years ago, that wasn't the case. But it is the case now, because the cost of living is batshit insane in this state, and it's getting worse across the whole country. The amount of homeless people I see on a regular basis is really scary. And when I watch videos of like old people, like there's a YouTuber, David Hoffman, he did so many interviews in the 20th century. Like if you love history, just subscribe to that guy's channel. His channel's much better than mine as far as I'm concerned. Has way more value, in my opinion, if I were to just like throw myself under a bus to promote an entirely different content creator. Anyways, so yeah, I'll watch these interviews. Like the other day I was watching this interview where this actor talked about regrets he had when he raised the baby boomer generation. And he talked about how things eventually got so bad during the Depression that a lot of times, like, he would eat food out of the garbage. Like, if he finds, like, some beans in the garbage, he'd be like, oh, he'd get excited. He'd take it out of the garbage. He'd, like, you know, blow off the ants and eat the beans. These things were that bad back then. And his definition of depression is basically most people are poor. And I'm just noticing in general that, like, poverty is just getting increasingly worse in this country. People are doing worse than ever, and people oftentimes have to rely on family just to survive. And some of my friends who lack family support, I know I could have jumped over there, but I just didn't. A lot of people who are lacking family support or have limited family support are, like, basically fucked right now. I'm fortunate enough that I can live with my parents. Some people don't have that luxury. And I've noticed a lot of people who do live on their own, they basically have to work all the time to survive. I'll literally go on Facebook and I'll see friends of mine who live on their own, who are married, like, literally complaining about the fact they often have to work like 12 plus hours per day and are stressed all the time, and they just basically can't afford their needs. Even though they're like, I don't know why I did that. Oh my god, I just realized something. I normally never go this route. Shit. So there's a skip at the beginning of this level, and I just totally forgot to do that. I'll just play through a level, screw it. Oh, or not. Okay, I'll do the skip then. Really nice skip. I was like, something seems wrong. Again, my autopilot's kind of shit. There we go. And that skips through most of the stage, which is really convenient for speedruns. That's one thing I like about speedrunning this game more than Donkey Kong Country 2. All the warp barrels in Donkey Kong Country 2 are like in the first two worlds. This one, they specifically put in stages where you really don't want to have to play them in a speedrun. Like, did that stage look like it'd be fun to play in a speedrun? No, it's not. Anyways, so yeah, I'm just noticing that people are just doing worse and worse. And it's scary. I'm just generally concerned about the fact that more and more people are doing worse. And a lot of people I know who are doing worse than they did, say, 5 years ago are people who are, like, good at what they do for a living. A lot of people had to quit their jobs because suddenly whatever income they got from that, they can't afford to live off that anymore because the pandemic has, like, I can't believe I did that. Okay. That was stupid. I'm not getting that barrel. Alright, I actually need to think for a moment or else I'm going to die. That's actually kind of an interesting analogy. I need to think for a moment or I'm going to die. I wonder how many people who are, like, homeless who have to think that way. Because it's like that may become a more common way of thinking in the future. Because things are getting really bad. I'm noticing just in California, like, it seems like every year the amount of homeless people continues to increase. It's genuinely horrifying to me that things are just going this badly for so many people. And even if you're, like, super economically privileged, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stay economically privileged. There are a lot of people who like, grew up economically privileged, had it great. Oh, whoops. Oh, well. Had it pretty good. Hey, it's outside of, like, third time I've died so far in this run. That's not too bad. I'm mostly through the game. Anyways, oh my god, that just killed my train of thought. I hate it when that happens. I have ADD, so, like, a lot of distractions will just totally mess me up. It's probably why I find it actually difficult to, like, play a game while talking at the same time. Anyways, so yeah, people are doing worse than before, and a lot of people who lack economic privilege seem to be doing unbelievably awful. And it's really scary. And a lot of people who have economic privilege now might not have it 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years from now. Like, sometimes people just lose it. It happens. It's happened to a lot of people. And this economy is increasingly becoming... Wow, I timed that jump poorly. Well, I'm doing bad in the stage. It's okay, though. Anyways, yeah. a lot of people who benefit from stuff like that, eventually they might not benefit from it at all. And times are just getting tougher for a lot of people. And what worries me is that the guy we currently have president right now is acting like the economy is not that bad. He's like Joe Biden, in my opinion. I don't think I've ever had a president who has handled the economy worse than him besides maybe George W. Bush. I mean, George W. Bush handled the economy really bad, but what blows me away about Biden is that things are really bad right now and he's acting like they're not. I don't think George W. Bush pretended when the economy was going to shit that things were good. Like, whenever the economy was, like, bad, I don't think he ever, like, pretended things were like, hey, things are actually looking up. Look at all these great stats. When the economy was absolute dog shit. I mean, when you have an economy where a lot of people in their 30s have to live with family or they're fucked, if you have an economy where people who lack family support have high likelihood of becoming homeless, and that's the direction your economy is going in, that's very scary. What's also horrifying is that the millennial generation, a lot of us were convinced that we needed to get these, nice, shiny college degrees to get, like, these good-paying jobs. And, certainly that worked for some people. But the thing is, even if you have, like, better pay because you got that college degree, you also probably have a lot of debt. In fact, the amount of debt people tend to have in this economy is ridiculous. I mean, how is somebody supposed to be remotely free if they have a ton of debt? Like, what if what made sense to them, say when they were like 25, suddenly doesn't make sense to them anymore when they're like 30? And yet they're stuck in a certain life path, if that makes sense. Like, or even worse example, some people, they think they know what they want to do for a living, what they want to do for the rest of their life at like 18, pull out like, get in a 6-digit student loan debt and then really screw themselves over. My student loan debt's like under $7,000. I didn't take any out until I was like 25 when I went to a university. So, I mean, my student loan debt situation, I'm not like really worried, if that makes sense. I think I missed On Guard. Yeah, I did. Oh well. I don't feel like going. Unless I die, I'm not going back. That does make the stage a lot harder, though. The stage is a lot easier with On Guard. But yeah, so, I mean, just in general, so, like, a lot of millennials were convinced, hey, you need a college degree. Well, one of the problems, and they don't explain this to people in college. They don't explain this to people in high school. If they explain this to people in college, a lot of people would just drop out. Which is that, hey, let's just pretend, like, at some point that about, say, I'm just going to pick a random subject. It's just, these aren't, like, real numbers. This is just a hypothetical example. Let's just pretend that, say, 1 year, there's about 1 million jobs that require a psychology degree. Like, just pretend there's like 1 million jobs that have a psychology degree and about 500,000 people have degrees in that. Well, that's going to suddenly be a really good paying field if, for those people who have the degree. But what happens, for example, if, say, 2 million people get the degree and only about 1 million jobs require it? Then it becomes highly competitive to an extreme. And a lot of people need an absurd amount of education that costs a fortune to even get into those jobs. And a lot of people often would have to live off of a ton of debt. That's just an example. And it's like, what happened is that the millennial generation became the most well-educated generation in American history, and then yet we ended up being the most worst off economically in a long time. Like, worse than Gen X, worse than the baby boomers. And just, like, things got worse for us compared to a lot of previous generations. And I think that's really unfortunate. And part of that is because of the fact that when you have more and more people getting degrees in certain subjects, suddenly they don't have to really pay you as much for those degrees because you're effectively more replaceable. So, for example, going back to the psychology example, you know, if there was only about 500,000 people with psychology degrees, and there's 1,000,000 jobs requiring it, you're not very replaceable. But if there's like 2,000,000 people with psychology degrees and 1,000,000 psychology jobs, you're very replaceable unless you're exceptional at your job. I think what's eventually going to happen is a lot of people are going to have to become workaholics to even survive in this economy if they don't have economic privilege. That's just my guess. And that's not necessarily a horrible thing. I mean, there's a lot of value to work in general, but I find it really sad that a lot of people, say, who are part of Gen Z, I feel like they're very much deprived of a lot of opportunities that Millennials had. Like, the social aspect of college, for example, that a lot of Millennials enjoyed, a lot of the Zoomers who spent a fortune on tuition, way more on tuition than even, like, I did, they got deprived of that. And since the quality of education keeps going down, that also is lowering the value of these degrees. So they're making it easier to get these degrees, and the quality's going down. That's really bad for almost anybody who actually has a college degree. And it makes it scary for anybody to even find it a worthwhile economic risk. But as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people, it almost seems like their brains don't even work well anymore. Like I mentioned with some of the retail employees I talked about, like that one lady who 4 times I've gone there to buy water, and she gave me the wrong change. 4 times. I wish I was exaggerating, but it's literally been 4 times. Very simple cashier job compared to like others. And, I mentioned the vitamin store, how I literally would just ask the employee a simple question that they can't answer, that literally every other employee who has worked there in the past that I would talk to would have no issues answering the question, understanding it. And it's just, a lot of the workers are getting worse, partially because of the fact that it's becoming harder for... Oh, I'm just trying not to fucking die. I do not want to get... I'm trying to... That's right, I forgot. There we go. I just don't want to redo this stage. This is actually, in my opinion, one of the hardest stages in the game. To speedrun, because of that whole stupid gimmick. Anyways. So yeah, you have basically a lot of employees who are being replaced with shittier employees, partially because they can't really afford to do certain jobs that they previously could, partially because of the inflation, cost of living, etc. And another example, when I went to vacation in Lake Tahoe in 2021, around that time I found out there was a store that was there for 4 decades that had to close down because the cost of living there apparently skyrocketed by about 50% to where, it turns out these people had to just leave Tahoe. And I noticed that a lot of these places were short-staffed to an extreme. It's concerning, just in general, that our economy is going in this weird direction where people, the economic value of what they do is kind of going to shit for a lot of people. Where a lot of people would previously do a specific job and then suddenly that doesn't work anymore. It almost seems like, and to make matters worse, a lot of our social safety nets are probably going to collapse in the future. So previous generations got to benefit from things like Social Security, but people are living way longer than ever before, and the birth rate's plummeting. And it's plummeting for several reasons. One, a lot of millennials, myself included, never wanted kids. So people like me are never going to have kids. Two, a lot of people who might have interest in kids, it's not really, it would destroy them economically, among other factors. I mean, it's just, we've just kind of created an economy where, like, the way people have previously lived their lives that was, like, normal, suddenly is just doesn't really work for a lot of people without ruining their futures. And people, a lot of people are just slaves to their biological instincts. And I understand it quite well, because it's like, you know, for example, human beings have this natural desire to want sex. That's just how human beings are programmed. And a lot of times if someone doesn't have kids or whatever, their like biological clock tends to hit them hard in their 30s. So I'm not somebody who ever wants kids, but for whatever reason, like, my sex drive is like much fucking higher in my 30s than it was at any fucking point in my life. And I can't help but wonder if that's like almost a biological clock thing where it's like, oh, I did not reproduce. Now my body wants to tell me to go fuck myself. I mean, that's just my way of looking at it. God, I hope I don't die. Oh, thank God I didn't die. But yeah, and it's just, you know, a lot of human beings are just slaves to their biological instincts. They often just can't help it. And that's just reality. So, what also happens is, oh God, I don't want to die. This is actually getting kind of scary. Okay. I don't think I have to worry much anymore. I just do this. I'm just play very carefully. I love how it's positioned away where you think the enemy's just going to fall off, but instead it just lands straight on there. But that one, it does actually fall off. I just find it kind of funny. But yeah, so it's like, a lot of people can't like live out their biological desires, their functions, without like potentially ruining their lives. Like, there's a lot of people I know, if they decide to have kids, their lives are fucked. Like, economically, they're probably fucked for the rest of their lives. And a lot of people who do reproduce, that most likely have good family support, because people who have like inferior family support are less likely to reproduce, because they're more likely to be fucked. I mean, if there's something that should be a recurring trend with a lot of things I'm talking about, it seems to be like, it doesn't seem to matter how hard a lot of people seem to work anymore. What tends to like result in the best outcome for a lot of people tend to be more a byproduct of economic privilege. Because a lot of people can't seem to actually survive on their own anymore. It's really weird. We went from, say, the 1950s, where we lived in a very patriarchal society where a single man could like live off a single income and provide for a whole family, to two working adults suddenly cannot like make it very well anymore, unless like they're both like, unless one of them like, unless at least one of them is like a high wage earner. That's really scary for the future of this economy. When I traveled to Oakview to visit a friend it was the first time I visited that area in like 22 years. And I used to buy chocolate bars there for between about like 45 to like 55 cents. When I went there, the cost of a chocolate bar went up to about, get this, about $2.49 for the same type of chocolate bars I used to buy for like between 45 to 55 cents. So in a time span of about 23 years, the cost of a chocolate bar, a Hershey's bar to be more specific, has gone up by almost 500%. I find it really weird too that in 2012, about the only presidential candidate I can think of that actually seemed to actually care about inflation, that actually took it seriously, was like Ron Paul. That's about it. I've been concerned about inflation like most of my life, because I've just worried about how that could affect things long term. And now it seems to be like one of the top issues now. And it's like, this should have been like a top issue a long time ago. And to prove that I do, in fact, that I have a long history of like complaining about my concerns with inflation, I have an eBay account called Inflation is the Root of All Evils that I made back in 2009. And prior to that, I can't really prove this because the forum's gone, but I remember literally arguing with people about inflation on forums like back in like 2006. Can't prove that because the forums are, like the forum I'm thinking of is gone. Rest in peace, by the way, to like a lot of the internet forums that used to grace the internet that are gone now. Very few forums I used to post on, like in the early 2010s, is even around anymore. And almost none of the forums I used to post on, like in the mid-2000s, exist. Like, almost none of them. It's really weird. Unless you go to, like, the Wayback Machine, but that doesn't really count. So, yeah. Technology has changed a lot of things, people's history, disappearing from the internet. And it's also weird just how different millennials act nowadays. It seems like millennials are just scared. I mean, a lot of millennials used to be edgy as fuck on the internet, used to tell offensive jokes, were generally funnier people. And now a lot of millennials, it's like, if they act that way now, it's like a threat to their career, because cancel culture. And people are so scared when it comes to money that a lot of people are just going to act however way they need to keep earning a certain income, especially if they have to provide for a family. So another reason why I never want kids. A lot of the bullshit that people often have to deal with as a byproduct of I'm providing for a family, that's my primary responsibility, etc., etc., etc. That type of stuff is not something I ever want to deal with in my life. I don't mind, like, hey, I have to pay rent, I have to work, stuff like that, long term. That doesn't bother me. But, like, God, responsibility of, like, taking care of another life. I mean, I find it hard enough just to, like, take care of a bunch of cats. I love my kitties. One of my cats is on my lap right now, April. Sweet little kitty. She almost died, by the way. Like, in November of 2022, she had a stroke and a seizure, and she almost died. I'm very lucky that cat's even still alive. Very lucky. And she's doing much better now. I think she'll live a long life now, but my God, I thought she was on her last legs at that time. But she recovered from that horrible thing. But that's another thing too. People have gotten really sick during this pandemic. And arguably, I've gotten less sick, partially because I did things differently from most people. I put a ton of effort into doing things like lift kettlebells. Like, one of the first things I did when I found out we had a pandemic and I was going to be stuck inside, I bought a 40-pound kettlebell. Literally one of the first things I did. I'm like, yeah, I have to buy one of these before they're, like, sold out. And that was easily one of the best investments I've made in the last few years. Nowadays, I have, like, a 50-pound kettlebell, my 40-pound kettlebell, 15-pound. I have, like, a set of 20-pound dumbbells, hip resistance bands, ankle weights. Good stuff to, like, keep me, like, you know, in decent shape. And that's another thing, too, that's kind of weird about getting older, is that, you know, as much as I love this game, I've been playing this game for over 25 years, my interests keep changing, like, as a byproduct of getting older. Like, if I were to be completely blunt, like, if I were to roast myself, I think who I was for most of my life was kind of a man-child. Like, just if I were to be completely blunt, I feel like who I was most of my life was kind of a man-child. That's just how I honestly felt in myself. I don't think having interest in, like, childhood hobbies, like, makes a person man-child. Playing video games does not make you man-child. Caring about comic books, things like that, none of that makes you a man-child. For me, what made me a man-child was my immaturity. I had serious immaturity issues for most of my life. And it really wasn't until I had to do a lot of deep reflection during the pandemic to where I realized that. and how that caused a lot of problems in my life, and at times I made bad decisions by probably that. Oh, my hand. I'm sorry. So my hands are literally killing me right now. That's another problem too. I have horrible hand pain issues. So I don't play video games as much as I used to because I literally couldn't hold the button. Like, my hands are literally killing me right now trying to play through the stage. It's one of the reasons why I like speedrunning is because, hey, you don't have to play a game for very long. You can just do one run and then call it quits. And, but this game is not that short of a game. I mean, sure, you can beat this game like... Oh, fuck. Oh, that almost went badly. Oh, well, okay. Yeah, see, my hands are hurting like crazy, so now I can't play the game well at all. That's one of the reasons why it comes to yeah, my hands are just fucked right now. This is one of the reasons why I just find it hard to be serious about any competitive game anymore, besides speedrunning. Because it's like, okay, speedrunning, it's like a race against myself. I don't have to do it for very long. I could just do one run in a single day. Like this, right now, this is the only time I've played video games like all day. It's just this. And this is probably the first time I've played a video game like in over a week. I'm not very, and the main reason I even decided to play this game isn't because, man, I thought, man, I badly want to play Donkey Kong Country. It's because I wanted to record a video for YouTube. One of the things I just want to bring up is that I am not that passionate about gaming anymore. I fake my passion because most of my friends are gamers. I've invested much of my identity off of video games. Like, I care way more about things like fitness and eating healthy nowadays, stuff like that. Basically, like, adult shit. Like, adult concerns. Because partially because of the pandemic, like, has made me, like, a bit more concerned about, like, what will happen to me long term if I don't try my best to take care of my health. Like, I hardly drank at all during the pandemic. So a lot of people, they cope by drinking this and that. I went like 23 months without like drinking alcohol at one point. I did drink more in like January 2023 than I did like in the entirety of like 2022, which was the equivalent of I had alcohol in like 4 different days. Fun times, fun times. Not going to do that much in the future, but it was fun to do that like once in a while. God, I autopilot that thinking it was the second boss for some reason. Second boss, basically, each time Neki comes by would only like throw it like once. But this time it's like it throws it more often. Like each hit, it's like now it's going to be 5 of them. And my hands are fucking killing me. Oh, so anyways, I'm almost near the end of the game, and some people watching this video are probably thinking, so why the fuck do I have no hope for the future? Well, okay, if I were to try to sum up, like, kind of consolidate a lot of the points I have, it's that, basically, our political system is rigged, to where we can't really do anything about our government, realistically speaking. I mean, the two-party system purposely gives us, like, abysmal options. Man, I am autopiloting where I, for some reason, thought he was going to run a 3rd time. My autopilot, by the way, is abysmal. I like have to think all the time, or else I behave like a fucking moron. That's just a character flaw I have. Anyways, so yeah, our political system's rigged. The economy is currently set up in a way to where a lot of people get to survive or live good lives in the long term. It's probably going to be mostly a byproduct of economic privilege and hard work, unless they're, like, brilliant. Like, insanely smart to an extreme. And even then, they probably benefited from economic privilege when they were younger. I cannot believe I got hit by that. I am embarrassed. Oh well. Poor Diddy Kong, he deserved better. I'm amazed, honestly, I was able to, like, die so few times. Like, playing this game. Like, while talking. Fun fact, when one of my cousins first beat this game, he thought the credits were over in this scene, so he just put the controller down, and then K. Rool reappeared, and then he was like, oh shit. He didn't say oh shit back then, but he basically, I think he died. Anyways, just a fun little story. Anyways, so yeah, our political system is rigged, so there's not much we can do about it, and a lot of things that people can do to try to cause a political revolution most likely aren't going to work. And people are probably going to get desperate to the point of like resorting to violence, but that's probably just going to result in an even worse outcome than what we have right now. Jobs are pretty everywhere, pretty much losing all their like competent employees. A lot of people can't survive off the pay they're getting. Our monetary policies are fucked, largely because back in a long time ago, like FDR took us off the gold standard, and during a time when people were hungry and poor, that guy made the decision to also like seize people's gold. So it's like where you literally would get thrown behind bars if you had gold. They didn't reverse that ban until like the 1970s when they completely took us off the gold standard. Pretty sure it's the 1970s when they ended the ban, because I'm pretty sure it was around the time the gold standard got completely abolished by Nixon, which then led to some of the worst inflation we've like had like ever. Like the 1970s had abysmal inflation. At least some of the worst inflation we've had like in the last 50 years easily. It's horrific back then. And it's horrific now. Like I'll give you an example. So I currently weigh more now than I did a year ago. I think about a year ago I weighed about like 8 pounds less. Part of that is because of the fact that some of the food I was consuming then is just too expensive now. So nowadays I do things like eat a lot of bread, which is not the healthiest thing to eat, but it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper for me to walk to Vaughn's at 6 in the morning to buy French bread for $2.50 than to try to eat like how I did a year ago. In general, it's like a lot of people have to make adjustments just to afford necessities like that. And it's just going to get worse. And what blew me away the other day, I was having a conversation with this person who worked at Vaughn's, and they said apparently in the future, you know, nowadays, currently at the Vaughn's I go to, they bake it fresh and this and that. Apparently they're not going to do that in the future because changes are coming. And I told the person that's a politically correct way of saying everything is going to shit. And it's like, that's basically why I have no hope in the future. It's because everything is going to shit. I feel like part of why a lot of millennials obsess over things from their childhood, like video games, is because the current state of reality is quite awful. And most people have really bad coping skills. I mean, some people turn to drugs, some people turn to sex and pornography, some people like just do really self-destructive behavior that ages them, but it's how they cope. I mean, most people have really bad coping skills in general. It's like, it's really concerning just how bad most people's coping skills are. I mean, mine aren't great either. Like, one of the reasons why I was so addicted to video games for like much of my life is because that was like one of my biggest ways to cope with reality, because I've struggled with reality for like much of my life. But at least the reality we lived under when I was younger used to make more sense than it does now. Now a lot of things they used to tell people, yeah, go to college, go in debt, do this and that, and it's like none of that really makes any sense to me. Like, taking out a mortgage also doesn't make any sense to me personally. Nothing against my friends who've taken out mortgages. I mean, for a lot of people, it's a much better alternative than having to pay rent. I'm fortunate enough that I had like a good landlord back when I lived on my own. A lot of people I know have had landlords from hell and roommates from hell. So yeah, but it's like, I mean, one of the problems with a mortgage is that what if the economy tanked into depression and a lot of people who currently rely on employment are not able to like pay their mortgage? I mean, look what happened to a lot of Gen Xers in 2008. A lot of Gen Xers lost their jobs and suddenly they lost their homes that they had a mortgage on. I mean, this stuff tends to happen. And it's like, I feel like a lot of people who are middle class, they want an upper class lifestyle, so they'll live in debt to achieve that. A lot of people who are upper class, they want the lifestyle of a rich person, so they'll live off of debt to achieve that. And, you know, for me personally, like, I'm someone who lives in poverty, so guess what I did? I'm in debt, partially because I wanted to live a lifestyle more similar to someone who's middle class. That's one of the reasons why I went in debt when I went to a university. Not a huge debt, less than $7,000 student loan debt. Pretty small compared to what a lot of people have had to deal with, but still, you know, that's just the way people behave. And it's like, my way of looking at things, my spending habits have changed significantly to where, like, I rarely buy video games anymore. I mostly just play old games I already own, because it's just, I don't feel like spending money on games. It's just not worth it to me when there's like other financial priorities that make more sense. And it's just, overall, I'm just very concerned about the future, because I think we're going to tank into a depression. It just seems to be what seems to be the likely outcome. Because in this one video I watched earlier that I referenced by David Hoffman, this guy mentioned the fact that basically a depression is basically when most people are poor. Well, what's happening? The middle class is evaporating. Once the middle class is like gone, much of the upper class is like, I mean, we're eventually going to live in a fairly two-tiered society. Wow, that run was a lot slower than 2 other runs I did recently. Oh well. At least I get to enjoy my banana hoard. But yeah, things are just looking bad. You know, it's like, I mean, I just wanted you to think, like, when I was 7 years old, I remember, like, feeling a sense of satisfaction. I went in there because, like, DK has his banana hoard. Hooray. I used to, you know, really love just coming here, bouncing on here, getting my one-ups, stuff like that. Still do. I still enjoy doing a lot of things I enjoyed in childhood, but at the same time, it's like things are getting so bad, it just baffles me, just how bad things are getting. And it's affected how I spend my money, where a lot of things I used to value with my money, I currently don't. And in general, I just feel like this economy is likely to take into depression where people are going to spend less money. And so what happens when people spend less money? So it's like, okay, when I was like 7 years old, my first time playing this game was like at a game store. My mom like paid some money so I could try this game out in a store. And, you know, like, one of the cool things about when you play this game for the first time, like, if you're just moving forward, like, let's just say you're just moving right with Ramby, you're holding the run button. Oh, cool little discovery, because he has these horns, and you get to, you know, that cool little discovery. You know, there's just this, you know, children, I feel like, are very much brainwashed by advertising in general. And what amazes me is that that's generally, it seems like that type of brainwashing seems to just exist in people almost their entire lives. Like, okay, yeah. When I was a kid, a lot of things I didn't need, I was convinced I needed them. Nowadays, as a grown-ass adult in my 30s, I don't fall for that, and yet somehow a lot of advertising tactics still seem to be very effective. That enemy used to really screw me over when I was like 7 and I was brand new to this game. Oops. Wow. That's one thing I like about DK, he can just kill them one hit. But yeah, I should probably honestly end this video by now. Like, I did the playthrough. It's just, I don't know, this video is just very rambly. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, what should I do next, kind of a thing, in the game, while just explaining my points. Which is that, okay, here's the too long didn't watch sort of summary. Like, if I were to consolidate everything, I'm just not going to play. I'm just going to let let DK and Diddy do whatever they do. I love how DK's like not even on the ground. He's just hanging on the tree by his nah, he's just in the air, pounding his chest. Anyways, so yeah, what is the too long didn't watch summary as to why I have no hope for the future? It's that everything is going to shit. It's that a lot of people, their brains don't seem to work well anymore. The economy is gone in a direction to where anybody who doesn't benefit from economic privilege is probably fucked unless they are like a high income earner. And a lot of people who are high income earners, a lot of them, not everybody, but a lot of them did benefit from economic privilege when they were younger. Things are just getting bad. Our electoral system is rigged. It took me a long time to truly recognize like how truly broken our political system is, and that pretty much no political party in America is actually going to save us. Absolutely none of them. Like in 2022, the only thing I voted for were propositions because I didn't trust any of the politicians who ran for office. I was not impressed by their messaging. I had over 100 candidates on my ballot in the primaries. Not a single one of those people was worth voting for. Not a single one. And it's confusing. Look how confusing to a lot of people, like how things can be so bad. Look how confused Diddy Kong looks. I love Diddy Kong. He's so cute. This is what nostalgia does to your damn brain. I get all emotional over this pixelated monkey on a screen. I still love this game. I'll probably play this game till I'm like an old fucking man. If I had the privilege to live old, you never know when anybody could die. Hell, there could be some day where people just randomly find out, oh, Willie Corley's dead because he walked by a train station, there was a drive-by. Like at one point when I lived near a university, I found out about like 7 years later that after like leaving the town that, oh, it turns out some assholes did a drive-by shooting. Not 7 years after I left, like 6 years after I left the town, suddenly I'm like, oh, drive-by shooting right near a train station I used to walk by all the time. 8 people dead. A lot of places I used to walk in the city, a lot of murders have happened there since then. In places I used to walk. Like, one thing to keep in mind about life is almost any year can be your last. Because you could just be in the wrong place in the wrong time and your life is over because some idiot whose brain doesn't work right, which, you know, there's a lot of people whose brains don't seem to work right anymore in the world we live in, will do some horrible harm and damage because they think the solution is violence, which, as I mentioned earlier, even with how bad things are politically, where I view our elections as rigged, just 100% rigged. I really have no hope for our political system at all. You know, probably the most effective way to achieve a revolution would probably be a violent revolution, but the outcome would probably be even worse than what we have now. So it's like, you know, the more people resort to violence to solve a problem, it just leads to more violence. And, you know, I really wish people would, like, embrace, like, peace and all that other stuff, but it's like, I don't know, a lot of human beings, they like to use violence to solve answers. Especially people in positions of power. Especially the military-industrial complex, which I'm convinced runs this country, because, you know, Democrats and Republicans, they argue endlessly over all these different issues. They make a huge commotion. Your people's social media feeds are flooded with all this rhetoric about all these different political issues. But man, whatever the military-industrial complex wants, they usually get. And even if we, like, pull out of a war like Afghanistan after being there for, like, 2 decades, well, suddenly now we're heavily invested in the war in Ukraine. And, it's like, regardless of whether or not you support our involvement in Ukraine, it's just another example of how what the military-industrial complex wants, they usually get. I'm 100% convinced the military-industrial complex runs this country. They're also, like, one of the most competently run government organizations when you look at the fact that, like, they have so much funding. They're capable of, like, so much destruction. There's another thing, too. Like, actually helping people. Like, our government fucks up much of the time it actually tries to help people. A lot of times they just make things worse. But man, if their goal is to destroy, our government's really good at destroying things. Really good at fucking things up. But yeah, so on our government side, no hope in that area. When it comes to the economy, things are looking so bad that I'm just mentally just trying to prepare for the possibility of an economic depression someday. I think one investment that might be worth looking into someday is like gold, but the biggest problem with gold is like, where the fuck do you store it? Like, let's just say you have like your life savings invested in gold. Where do you store it? I mean, in some states they accept gold as an alternative currency. They have like gold banks, but like there is no gold bank near where you live. I mean, you could just put it in your house, but like, what if somebody, you know, you invite over, they seem trusting, suddenly you go to use the bathroom, and then, oh, the person you invited is gone, and, oh, where's my gold? Where's my gold? I mean, it's like, that's another thing too that's really scary about the times we're living in, is that a lot of people are going to become less and less trusting of new people in their lives. Like, during times of, like, economic despair, people tend to be more fearful about meeting new people. So, I mean, it's just our society is just completely gone to shit. I mean, everything has gone to shit. But yeah. Anyways, I just felt like making this video largely because I've been very depressed about a lot of different things, and I felt like this video would probably be the best way to express that. Plus, I've been wanting to upload a playthrough of this game for a while, even though this is honestly not that good of a playthrough. I'm capable of doing like way faster runs of this game. But the point of this video wasn't necessarily how good I played at the game. It was more so just what I wanted to talk about. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope everyone who watched this video has a wonderful day and your future ends up being nowhere near as bleak as, like, I predict the future. Like, I'm honestly hoping this video ages like milk in the sun. That's what I hope a lot of the rhetoric about the doomsday scenarios I talk about, the rhetoric just ages like milk in the sun. That's what I hope. Anyways, if anyone has actually watched this whole thing, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. I've been very depressed about a lot of things, and if people enjoy this type of content, where I just casually play through a game and just ramble about stuff, let me know in the comments, because I'm generally kind of curious, like, what people want to actually hear. Also, to anybody who subscribed to this channel because of the new Super Mario Bros. Wii video I made, I hope you're not too offended that I don't like that game very much. I chose that game because it was the best game I could pick to demonstrate the modded Wii mode. This is the biggest irony too. The entire Wii era of Nintendo, I think, was one of their worst eras. And a ton of people who subscribe to this channel subscribe to it because they're nostalgic for the Wii years. Where it's like, I'm more so somebody who's like nostalgic for like the Super Nintendo era, the GameCube era, the Game Boy Advance era. Those are like the eras of Nintendo to me that like I personally enjoy the most. But there were also eras of Nintendo I enjoyed when I was a lot younger. So that definitely had influence too. Nostalgia does weird things to the brain. Kind of rots your brain actually, if you let it happen. Anyways, thanks for watching.